It's surely good to be with you today, and I have what to me is an exciting topic. I need to move fairly quickly. I've got a lot of stuff here to talk about. Some of the times I'm not going to read what's on the slides, so I hope you can and do. I don't know if your mind can go two ways at once. I don't know if you can listen to what I'm saying and read what I'm not saying at the same time, but we'll probably give you some of those opportunities. As we manage ranches, there's always four areas we need to be considering: production, economics and finance, marketing, and people. And today, one way or another, we'll get to all of those, because I think you just have to do it. Sometimes I hear people say, gosh, there's just me and the wife and 2 kids. Why do I need to worry about people management? I want to suggest to you, sometimes that's the most difficult people management there is. When you're trying to have a family relationship and a business relationship at the same time, that's not always easy, and you have to work at it. Plus you have all kinds of other people relationships that you want to manage that help your business. The relationship with your banker, with your feed salesperson, with your equipment salespeople, and the list goes on. So people management becomes quite important. A profitable ranch begins with a shared vision. If you and the team around you aren't seeing your long-term vision the same way, it becomes very, very difficult to do business. What do we want our future to be? How do we make this exciting so the kids will maybe want to come back someday? So we'll want to stay, and so we'll want to stay engaged and be excited about it. Do we have expansion plans, and what's prudent indebtedness if we do expand? In this process, we want to define the core business. What is our core business? And how do we add to that core business if we do? And then we want to have strategies for land management, understanding principles of soil and water management and soil health, our cropping program, our grazing management, and how do we do all of that to build soil and economic revenue simultaneously. We want strategies for livestock management. We need a breeding plan. What kind of animal fits in my environment? And we have our business environment, our markets, and so forth, but then we as managers add to that. And to the cow, her environment is the natural environment plus whatever we as managers add to that. And we need to remember that. And what we add to the environment usually costs, and sometimes costs a lot. So we need to be careful that we don't add too much. So we want a cow that fits the environment, and our breeding plan needs to take that into consideration. We need to pick a calving date that makes sense for our area. And I think almost every area has a calving date that is most common to that environment, that best fits that environment, that we can rely on Mother Nature to help us out a little bit as we try to calve these cows in different places. And we can greatly reduce the fed feed input if we calve at the proper time. We need a nutrition and feeding plan and a marketing plan. Now that nutrition and feeding plan is going to hinge closely to your calving date. Now, profit isn't a 4-letter word, and a lot of people want to apologize for making a profit or wanting to make a profit, and I don't think there's anything wrong with profit. If you want your business to be, successful businesses need to be profitable and enjoyable. How do you get out of bed excited to go to work that day if it's not profitable and enjoyable? How do you expect the next generation to come to a business that's not profitable and enjoyable? You can be more profitable, and I hope you want to be. In my mind, there's just nothing good, sacred, enjoyable, or motivating about losing money. It isn't fun, it's destructive, it doesn't move you forward. And if you have profits, there's a whole bunch of things you can accomplish and do with the profits that you make. You can make people that have external relationships to your business happier. You can invest back in the ranch in numerous ways. Now there are three ways to improve profit. You can increase overheads, or no, not increase overheads, you can increase turnover, excuse me. Increase turnover, which means you just have more units to sell. You can do that two ways. You can have a bigger land base, or you can improve the land base you have so that you have more to sell. You can decrease overheads, and that, by the way, is usually the low-hanging fruit. Just don't have stuff that you don't need. And improve gross margin, where gross margin is defined as total returns minus the direct costs. And I'll talk mostly about cattle enterprises today, and in a cattle enterprise, the total returns are the sales of livestock minus the direct costs. And the direct costs are the costs that change if you change the number of livestock at all. They're basically feed and vet-related costs. Some transportation, some sales commissions, but those are small. Feed is the main one. Feed and then vet. And so the rest of the costs are overheads. So if you can reduce the overheads, you all of a sudden change your profitability right away. You want to have low overheads relative to size. Now there are really only two overheads. There's land and there's people. But when you have the land, you also have to count the stuff that's attached to the land, like fences and buildings and working facilities and so forth. So this says to me, I don't want to have any more of that stuff than I need. I want to locate a good cattle working facility where I can access as much of the ranch from that as possible. If I need two, locate two so that they can access perhaps all of the ranch. And you don't have to keep multiplying the number of working facilities. I know some far-flung ranches that I consult with in Arizona that, except for a very easy fencing situation that they use to just gather cattle into, the guts of their working facility, the expensive part is portable. So they can move it to several places just because they have so many areas where they may need to go over years to work cattle. So there's ways to work with that. People, you want people to be well-trained, efficient, and well-led. But when you add the people part of your overheads, you need to understand that people don't function very well without some equipment, without some tools. Transportation. A lot of ranches have pickups, saddle horses, four-wheelers, and they want some of each of those for every full-time employee. Not that you need them, and you ought to have as little of that as you can, but you still want to have enough equipment so that each person's expected to work and produce can be functional, highly functional. So you want to have as little as possible, but have it be very dependable. Okay, so we want to cut overheads to the bone, but still have enough to be highly functional. And then we want the wise use of inputs, and those are our direct costs. Feed, vet, trucking, sales commissions, and we'll talk a little more about feed in a little bit. And then we need to have good cows that are adapted to your environment and management. They need to be low maintenance. Shouldn't take much fed feed, shouldn't take much care. I used to get a lot of resumes from wannabe cowboys. And you know, nobody likes a good horse any better than I do that can work. And I just say a good horse in the right job, it can do half my thinking and 3/4 of my work for me. And it's a pleasure to sit on one that knows how to do that and do it in a low stress way and move cattle where you want without problems. But I don't hire cowboys, I hire fencers and water guys. You know, they want to tell you how they can rope and doctor calves, and if your cows are right, you shouldn't have to doctor very many calves. You know, that should be a very low part of your job. Now, if you're in a feedlot or something else, maybe that's a different situation. But on a ranch, if the cattle fit your environment, they shouldn't take much of your time. precious little of your time. They need to be highly fertile. They need to have good dispositions, and they need to be marketable. To me, that's what makes a good cow. They don't have to have the biggest calf in the world. They don't have to have all prime carcasses, even high choice. But they do need to be the things that I've listed there to truly be a good cow. So that tells me that if I can reduce overheads and then work on these three key ratios, I will get at those three ways to improve profit. You see, if I can reduce acres per cow, I've just increased turnover, because on the same acres now I run more cows. I've also spread overhead costs further. If I can increase cows per man, again, I spread less overheads across more animals. And every day that I can convert from a day where I feed cattle to a day where I graze cattle, that's a profitable day. And I just struggle to understand how in many parts of the United States you ever have to feed cattle, full feed. And I know a lot of places they do. This is probably one of those states where there's a certain number of ranchers that just feed during a certain part of the year because that's the way they've always done it. But cattle should be able to graze and make their living from grazing. I know ranches almost to Calgary, Alberta, Canada that never feed hay. And a number of them in Montana, some in North and South Dakota, never feed hay. And people wonder, how do they do that? Because they get snow there. Well, we might talk about that if we get time. Okay, so up to now we've determined that we have 4 things to manage. You need to start with a shared vision. You should have a desire to be profitable, and you certainly need to be profitable if you want to stay in business. There's 3 ways to improve profit. So the most effective is to reduce overheads, manage direct costs, have good cows, and market well. Now, if you can do those things, you're going to be a profitable rancher. Years ago, the man's here, Ron Bowles, asked me to give a talk several times. This is probably 25 years ago. And he asked me to talk about 10 things that had helped me most in the last 5 or so years as a manager. Well, I worked at that pretty hard. I made my list of 10 things that I thought had helped me most, and in the meantime, I narrowed it down to these 5. And after giving it a lot of thought for a lot of years, I'm convinced that these are the 5 essentials for successful ranch management. Now remember, we're managing 4 things. We're managing production, we're managing marketing, we're managing economics and finance, we're managing people. We have 3 ways to improve profit. We can reduce overheads, increase turnover, improve gross margin, and these 5 are approaches to that, or attitudes toward it, or the way we look at the problem. So the approach must be both integrative and holistic. And to be holistic, we oftentimes talk about a systems approach. In the business management college, they would talk about a systems approach. If you go to the Savory Institute, they'll talk about a holistic approach. There might be some subtle differences, but not huge differences. The approach is enabled by integration. And what do I mean by integration? Integration has to do with parts and pieces. The things we bring to our mind, to our computer memory banks so we can recall it when we need it, or our file cabinets. And so we have these bits and pieces that enable us to make good, holistic decisions where we try to consider the entire system. Can you imagine the decisions that have to be made at the farm that we saw this morning or yesterday, those of us who went? And the ripple effects of every decision. You know, they do anything with one of those animals that it probably has a ripple effect on every other one.
That's what we want to be able to begin to wrap our minds around, and we become holistic thinkers or systems thinkers, and we get to where we do that better and better. We will never be perfect, but we can be excellent. Remember that. We can never be perfect, but we can be excellent at being a holistic thinker or a systems thinker. Now, just a few crude examples of systems thinking. I just put a list of things here. High growth rate builds high milking ability. If you push that very hard, all of a sudden, your cows get bigger. They eat more feed because they give more milk, and now you have to run less of them on the same ranch. Or you have to buy in more purchased feed and supplement heavier. I think I know which of those two costs less. I still love heterosis. And I remember the first time I saw good economic data on crossbreeding systems and I knew how much power they had, I used to try to design them. This is back in my student days, years ago. And I'd design them on paper. Then I became a manager. And I learned that they were a lot easier to design on paper than they were to put on the ground. And that's one of the things that got me to using composite bulls and hybrid bulls, so I could bring heterosis and still keep the breeding plan simple. And I wanted it to be simple because of the effect that it could have on grazing management. More cows in one herd, less places to watch and check, and keep the labor costs down. Early calving. A lot of people, especially up in our northern country where we have snow and cold, I remember growing up calving in snowy weather when the snow was still on the ground, completely snow covered. We had calving sheds and all kinds of facilities to calve cows. It's really nice to finally understand. Dad used to say, too soon old, too late smart. But it's finally nice to understand that the cows are supposed to calve, not us. So let's let them calve. And sometimes we just calve too early, both for supplementation costs, feed costs, and also for calf survival and good cow fertility. The use of wormers and insecticides. If you could only kill the target organism, I would probably like wormers and insecticides. I have to admit, I occasionally still use them, but I do not like to. And every time I do, I worry about what have I just undone. You know, in our business, we shouldn't have to try to undo too many things. Now, Congress is a different matter. They talk about what are they doing. I'd like to see them start to talk about what they're going to undo, but they don't. Anyway, wormers and insecticides. How many good things are we killing? I've heard it said that for every animal that we consider a pest, or every bug that we consider a pest, there are 1,700 either benign or beneficial. Some of them are getting zapped too. Holistic thinking helps us start to wrap our mind around all of that. We don't understand any of it perfectly, but we start to understand it and gather more information and make better decisions as a result. Number 2, we want continuous improvement of the key resources, land, livestock, and people. Some people would put wildlife on there, and that's okay, especially if you're selling wildlife. Land, livestock, and people. Want them to improve. For me, I want to think soil first if I'm talking about the land. And I want to use planned, time-controlled, adaptive grazing. Now, a lot of us that advanced our grazing, we find that there are a few researchers that have said that rotational grazing doesn't work. There's no advantage from that. Thankfully, Mr. Richard Teague at Texas A&M is starting to show why that research didn't really come to that conclusion very well. And the problem is, and the reason I've put the word adaptive in there, and many of us have, is because researchers are forced to do the same thing over and over in each replication. We as managers don't. We adapt to the situation that the current year or the current month gives us. And we adapt what we're doing to the circumstances. It's never the same twice. That's difficult for research. But good managers get good at it, and the people who do good grazing for 5 years or more would never go back to conventional type grazing, season-long grazing. Okay, in this photo I've got 1 year plus since this was grazed last year. This is a fairly large pasture. It's about an 8 or 9 inch rainfall area in northeastern Utah. Now back in the background, I don't know how many of you recognize what sagebrush is. Those from the north do. But there's sagebrush there. It's not very productive in and of itself, but it can be helpful in some circumstances. You see the grass in there is green. Picture taken in June. Next month it will be yellow and stay that way for the next 10 months. It greens up in May if we're lucky. It looks like this in June. By July it will be yellow. I can graze it this year. I don't want to graze it at the same time next year. I graze it this year, and it's going to take it a full year to recover. It just is. Now, in the foreground, you have a little riparian area. Now, if I wanted to fence that by itself, I could probably come back to that riparian area again this year, but only there, because it's damp all the time. It will regrow quickly. So, principles apply every place. Short graze period, long recovery period, and then adapt to what Mother Nature gives you. I don't have a pointer, but a black white-faced cow that's kind of got a funny look on her face there. I don't know if you can tell what she's eating, but she's eating thistle. And my predecessor managers on this ranch, they went around spraying some thistle with molasses. And the cattle started eating the thistle, and now they just eat the thistle. They kind of like it. If I could show you a picture of this after the grazing's done, there might be a few of the stalks for the thistle, but the leaves are all gone, the flowers are all gone. They just eat the thistle. By the way, it analyzes as good as alfalfa hay. It analyzes as good as alfalfa hay. Okay, same ranch. Since last grazed, 28 to 45 days. What's the difference? It's not just the mob. The difference is irrigation. We can predict the next rainfall here. Now, it doesn't come through a sprinkler system, it comes out of a ditch, but the irrigation system's well designed. Those cattle move, and it's within a day or 2 or 3, and we've got water behind them, bringing up the next regrowth. When we can count on the next rain or the next water, and you get high productivity and growth continues, then the recovery time can be far shorter. Same principles, same location almost. Those pictures were taken within 5 miles of each other. Same location almost, but totally different environments because of where we can bring irrigation water to. So planned, time-controlled adaptive grazing will improve the land, and the results should be increases in carrying capacity and stocking rate. Now, the increase in carrying capacity needs to come first. Now, in case you have trouble understanding the difference, carrying capacity is the supply. That's what's grown, that's what's there to eat. Stocking rate is the demand. That's how many cattle you're going to put out there, how much you can take, or how much you are going to take or try to take. Carrying capacity must precede the stocking rate. But if you do it right, you reduce now acres per cow, and I've seen places that have cut it in half. I didn't think for quite a few years after I started the grazing better that you could cut it in half, but you can. I see examples of it all the time, even more than that. I know a guy that spent $45 an acre across his ranch to develop fence and water so he could graze better. When he started, he was at 30 acres per cow. Today, he's at 16 with less feeding than he had then. 16. He said, you know, that second ranch didn't cost me very much money. $45 an acre, he essentially bought another ranch. You following the arithmetic? It's amazing what you can do with water and fence and good grazing. So it reduces the acres per cow, increases turnover. Good grazing should produce better animal performance, fertility, growth rates, health. If it doesn't, you're not doing the grazing correctly. Now, let me make this one caveat. In the first year or two, as you change grazing methods, you're changing cow habit too. And then you may get a biological dip. The performance may dip. Be patient with that. Live through it. Happened to me. 2 or 3 years we were out this other side, and when we get out the other side, it didn't just come back to where it had been before. Conception rates, weaning weights, everything got better. So sometimes right at first when you make a change, you're changing the cattle's habit. You have to give her a chance to adapt to that. Okay, if I want to have continuous improvement of livestock, then I need to develop and select to fit the environment. And I think it begins with cows selected for this. Now you folks that are from the South, this probably looks strange to you. And this is just a representation of what you select for here. These are the toughest months of the year in northeastern Utah. By the way, Utah has 2 northeast corners, and this is the western of the 2 northeast corners. But at any rate, it's right on the border of Wyoming, just tucked under Idaho. And the toughest months of the year, toughest time of the year, we're asking cows to eat that dry brown stuff there and to be their major source of feed. Now you all have a time of the year that's the very toughest on your critters, the toughest for them to get through. I don't know if it'd be a hot spell or a slow growth spell or what, but you need to pick that time of year that would be the toughest in your situation and then select your cows to fit that environment. And then select the cows to fit that environment. And to get that done, you're most likely going to have to select a seed stock supplier that can produce the kind of bulls that can make that kind of cows. Okay, it's not profit per acre or even whole ranch. Or it is profit per acre or whole ranch. Profit per acre, whole ranch profit that you strive to improve, not production or profit per cow. We have focused for so long on weaning weights, yearling gains, individual animal performance, and we have made them bigger and faster growing and higher milking cows to get that, all of which is cost in supplementation, and we have reduced stocking rates as a result of that and hurt our profitability. To achieve this, cows may be smaller and give less milk. And if the cow's smaller and gives less milk, the calf is probably going to be smaller. But I can tell you this, a 1,000-pound cow compared to a 1,300-pound cow will wean a higher percent of her body weight, will wean more in proportion to her size than the bigger cow. So, I'm running more cows, they're weaning more in proportion to their size, I got more calves now, so I got more pounds per acre. And because the calves are a little smaller, what happens to the price of calves if they're a little smaller but they're still a good calf? It's a higher price, right? So not only do I have more pounds to sell, I'm going to sell them for more dollars per pound. So we need to wrap our minds around that kind of arithmetic if we can. Now in the meantime, your weaned calf crop percentage, and what's that? Of the cows that started the calving season pregnant, how many of them weaned a calf? And then the pregnancy rate, how many did you palpate, how many were pregnant? Okay, those percentages will go up because this cow is more adapted. She rebreeds better. She takes better care of her calf. She's more apt to wean a live calf. If she's more adapted, she doesn't get sick as easy. Her calf doesn't get sick as easy. So a lot of good things begin to happen. Okay, to do that, you need to select the right bull. And I think it has to be moderate or small in size. if you're raising your own replacement heifers especially. Moderate or small in size. Most people want and have too much milk. The conversion, just think of this, and it's true, every animal scientist that's ever studied this will tell you it's true. The conversion of grass to milk to pounds of calf is a poor conversion. Now that doesn't mean we don't need milk. We need enough milk to get that calf started in life, to start to develop a healthy immune system, to get up and go and be ready. But that's all you need. Beyond that, extra milk is pretty costly. Just need a good thrifty calf. And so we got to be careful with that. Now the care requirement, I don't know, it usually happens sometime in the winter before spring breeding season comes. You get articles in the popular press tell you how you should take care of your bulls so that they'll get cows pregnant next summer. Matter of fact, a lot of the bull catalogs you get, sire sale catalogs you get, warn you about how to take care of the bulls so he can breed the cows next summer. I read those things and I think, do I really want to keep replacement heifers out of that bull? That bull never has to gestate, does he? Never has to lactate. Got a pretty easy life. And I want to keep daughters out of him who do have to lactate and gestate and grow while they're doing that. And, so be careful. Be careful how you buy your bulls if you want to have cows that adapt to your environment. And then cull the right cows. You know, if you cut back on inputs, you cull the open cows, you cull the dry cows. Oh, the dries aren't the same as the opens. The dries are the ones that don't wean a calf that had one or were pregnant with one. The opens are the ones you palpate and there's nothing there to palpate. Or ultrasound, whichever. If they require any individual help or attention. Took me a few years, but I finally got to where if we had to touch them, apart from handling all the cows at once, that cow was going to be sold. We didn't need her or any of her offspring. Wild ones, same thing. Poor calf. I used to put ugly on there, and I said you could have your own definition of ugly. So you can put ugly there still. Sometimes there's some ugly makes some marketing importance, and so you do need a definition for ugly for your market and for your own personal satisfaction. Okay, so I've tried to improve land, livestock, people. And your people, you'd like them to be lifelong learners and be good decision makers. And it begins with understanding the manager's job. The manager's job is to create an environment in which people want to excel. That's the first part. An environment in which people want to excel, and then provide the tools, training, and freedom to do it. That environment in which people want to excel, if you can envision your own style, if you're the boss, think, would I like to work for me? Would that be very much fun? How much autonomy do I give? How much opportunity do I give to the people working with me and around me to be successful in and of themselves? You know, you want to have that environment. It goes, to some extent, goes back to that shared vision, but it also goes back to how good a leader are you? Create the environment in which people want to excel, and then provide the tools, training, and freedom to do it. If you're good and trying to get better, and somebody new comes to work for you, there's a high probability they're not going to know how you want things done, how you need things done, because it's going to be different than the people around you that aren't trying to be good, aren't trying to be better. It's an unfair expectation to expect a new person to know and see what to do and to know how to do it without training. And as they develop, then you can give more freedom. And as you give freedom, they become more empowered. They get a greater sense of accomplishment. So you put those things in order. Make sure the tools are adequate. I don't know how many of you have ever used those yellow wire stretchers that every once in a while snap back and pop your knuckles because they're getting kind of worn out. They're not very much fun. You ask your kid or somebody else to fix fence with that, they don't want to fix fence very long. But good tools, then proper training, and after proper training, then the freedom, once they've learned, the freedom to do it on their own. And giving them that freedom frees up your time. It empowers them. It helps them to become a better person and a better employee or a better team member. And then remember this, leadership is best gauged by the voluntary response of those being led. A number of you have commented to me about my articles in Beef Magazine. I don't have time to read the one that's going to come out here in May, but I just suggest you read it because we talk about this to some extent. But remember, if the response isn't voluntary, it's not leadership. Can you call it pushership or coercion or threatening? Something else, but it's not leadership until the response is voluntary. And to get voluntary response, you have to provide a motive. You see, this guy here pulling that Teichert truck, he got pretty good voluntary response, but he's got a reward for it too. Now, he wasn't sure that he was perfectly good leader, see, because he's got his horse trailer there too, just in case they don't all come and jump on his horse and go back and get the stragglers. But he was pretty sure they were going to come, and they did. Okay. Essential number 3. I want to use good planning and decision-making tools. And I want good financial records. I like enterprise accounting by cost category. In other words, okay, if I've got a cow-calf enterprise and a stock or steer enterprise and a replacement heifer enterprise, I want to have each one of those, and I want to know how much feed, how much hay, how much cake, or protein supplement, or salt and mineral, whatever my supplemental feeds might be, categorized separately, so I know how much I spent for each in each of those enterprises. And I want a good separation of direct and overhead costs. And I don't want to allocate overheads to the enterprises. Overheads are overheads. They don't change when you change cow numbers. They don't change when you change enterprise size. The thing you need to figure out is, what do I need to do to reduce overheads? And if I can reduce overheads, great, that saved me money. If I can't, I can't. But if I can reduce them, and most of you can, then reduce them. And then get the best gross margin, which is managing the direct cost. That's why I want the good separation of direct from overhead costs. You know, listening to, had a chance to visit with Dr. Gordon Hazard not too long ago. I think he told me he was 92 at the time. And he says, you know, some people call me cheap. I said, I'm not cheap. I am tight, but I'm not cheap. He said, if I can spend $1 and know I'm going to get 2 back, I'll spend that $1. He says, the problem with most cowmen, they just spend $1. He says, if they get 50 cents back, they act like they're happy. And we've got to be careful with that. That's what we're talking about. If we're going to spend that money on those direct costs, on that feed supplement, or whatever, you'd like to know that you're going to get it back, maybe double back. Because if I get the cows in the habit of having it, what happens if prices fall? Then I can't afford to feed the same level, right? And so you got to be real careful with that. Okay, and then I like to have a good record of all my sales listed separately. And by that I mean, if I sell 1 cow today, even 1 cow, today's date, the place I sold her, what did she weigh? So I'll have total weight. Let's say I sold 5 cows. The total weight, the number of cows, and the total sale proceeds. From that, my spreadsheet can calculate the average weight, the average price per pound, and the average price per head. And so I put in total receipts, total weight, total number of head. Let the spreadsheet calculate the rest. That's one of the, I hate computers, but I love what they do for me. So guess what? I put up with it. Then you want good production records. And I don't need very many, but I want a few. I want to know what my weaned calf crop percentage is. And I want every person working for me. And I had the fun of managing large ranches. Every full-time man had his herd, or her herd. Large herd, 800 cows probably. And they all knew their weaned calf crop percentage and the weaned calf crop percentage of all their co-workers. Now they knew that the guys that had 2-year-olds weren't expected to have the same percentage as the guys that had mature cows. But still we could compare, and we were basically comparing them year to year. Are you getting better? And once they got to 94 to 96, we said, we don't care if you get better. It might cost more to get better than it's worth. How much more do you have to feed 100 cows to get 2 more pregnant? And so you gotta take some things into consideration. Pregnancy rates, what percent pregnant? They all knew each other's pregnancy rates. And I want to see how that progresses from year to year. But if I'm getting 96% of them pregnant, that's enough. I mean, I'd take 98 with the same feed regime, but I'm sure not going to feed them any more if I've got 96% pregnant, trying to get 2 more pregnant. Weaning weight and yearling weight, or weaning weights and yearling gain. I always like to add up all of the weaning weights. I wasn't looking at individual weaning weights, total herd weaning weight. And yearling gain. Okay, the ones that I retained from a year ago, what did they weigh at weaning time, and what do they weigh now? How much gain is that? So I'd have my weaning weight plus my yearling gain, and that's my pounds produced per acre that year. And then I want to know my death loss by age group category. How many calves, how many yearlings, how many cows, how many old cows, how many stocker steers, how many replacement heifers, so forth. Whoa, how'd I do that? And how do I get it back? There we go. Okay. So we're planning. I want these things, then I got some planning going on. We're doing grazing planning. And that was a sit-down exercise for us. And I'd say to you, don't plan grazing by the seat of your pants. Actually sit down. Look at the last 2 or 3 years grazing charts. I don't care whether you've got them on the computer or on the spreadsheets on a table like these guys have. But plan it well. You guys probably don't need heavy snow plans down here, but up north we do. Maybe down here you've got to have a flood plan. I don't know. I was at a ranch in southeast Oklahoma last spring, and boy, they needed a flood plan. I told them they could put all their cows in one herd. That'd make 800 cows. No, you can't put 800 cows in one herd. When the floods came, they had to put 800 cows in one herd, and they found out, hey, you can't put 800 cows in one herd, can't you? And they did and do. Okay. Number 4. Essential number 4. We want to wage war on costs. We want to fight overheads, and we want to manage our direct costs as they contribute to the gross margin. I'm just going to focus on feed here because it is your major direct cost. Reducing the ratio of fed feed to grazed feed has tremendous economic significance. And try to think holistically with me here, because we're going to see a lot of things happen, and not just feed cost. However that happens. Grazing management can increase grazing days and reduce feeding days. You can ask cows to eat this kind of stuff if you know how to do it, and if you have the right cows. And that makes winter a lot cheaper than full feeding hay. You might eliminate or reduce the requirement for hay. And would you still need all the haying equipment if you did that? And the manpower to run it? What would happen if you were to buy the hay you would need and thereby increase your carrying capacity by the amount of hay you purchased? That would reduce acres per cow and increase turnover. But think about that. I've increased my carrying capacity a little bit. Now I can divide my overhead costs by more units of production, by the amount of hay that I brought in. And I've also imported somebody else's nutrients. I didn't just buy feed. Well, I did. I just bought feed, but he gave me some nutrients. And forgot about the fact that he gave me nutrients. Okay, what's this? That's what makes that hay go down. This is some pretty good high quality alfalfa hay, which in the area of that ranch is available. Doesn't rain very often, 9-inch rainfall. They can put up alfalfa hay that's never been rained on. And it's high quality. It'll be 18 to 22% protein. 3 pounds of that a day is plenty for that cow to make her eat that stuff and stay in good body condition. Now, if I'm going to feed 3 pounds a day, 3 times 7 is 21 for the week, right? But I'm only going to go 3 times. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Skip 1 day, skip 1 day, skip 2. The cow never knows when I'm going to come. She's not going to come until she starts hearing the feed tractor. Then she'll start to show up to get her share of that hay. So now I'm going to put out 7 pounds each time I go to get me to my 21 pounds. You all follow that? Same amount every day. Even though there's a 2-day skip once, I don't worry about that. I just want to get 21 pounds a week in them. I could go twice if I could haul that much on my feed outfit. I could go twice a week. But with that alfalfa hay and that protein, then they can convert that real junky energy and maintain body condition in a gestating cow that's going to calve in April. And hopefully by April that snow will be gone. So a little hay and a lot of cured grass, and it just works. They really will eat it. And that's what it looks like when you're done. So you can get them to eat some pretty sad stuff. And I think from what I saw, yes, I don't know, this is probably the prime time of the year down here, but there's probably times you don't have to ask cows to eat stuff that's as rotten as what I just showed you. And then heifer development's another way of reducing costs. And I think there's a couple of really big economic drivers. One is the target weight. We've been told for years that they must reach 65% of expected mature cow weight if they're going to get pregnant. They don't have to do that. 55% is, if they're the right kind of cattle, 55% will do that. And in fact, they will become better cows. If you want to Google some research, look up Rick Funston's research on heifer development out of the University of Nebraska, and he's got all kinds of documentation on that. And there are others too that are showing the same thing. The other thing is days of exposure to bull, and we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute, but I like to breed heifers for 21 days. I started doing 30 years ago, and we and everybody else loved it, and I've been writing about 30-day heifer exposures, and I've gotten more thank yous about that one suggestion in email comments to my articles than all the rest of my suggestions put together. People that have adopted the 30-day breeding season on yearling heifers, they just say, hey, we get a shorter calving season, they rebreed better as 2s and 3s. It gets better still if you cut it to 21. Now, some of you guys that are in grass-fed, you're keeping all your heifers anyway. You know, you might want to have a few that you don't want to expose to the bull just because they're ugly. But, you know, cut off those few, expose the rest to a bull, breed them for 21 days, and the ones that get pregnant are the good cows. And if you've got good cows to begin with, you're going to get enough pregnant in 21 days, probably more than you need. So if you got more than you need, you got a choice. I can either sell bred heifers, or I can sell bred cows. In my case, I would sell the bred cows. You're going to do your client a real favor. You're calving heifers anyway, so just calve a few more. That's no big deal, if you're already calving heifers. But if you're the guy buying cows, buying replacements, why do you want to buy and calve a heifer? She's got the 2 highest risk years in her life in front of her, and with translocation, that risk is increased. So buy bred cows. Now, if you're the guy making those replacement heifers, and you've got a few excess cows to sell, if you can team up with that guy that wants to buy replacements, the 2 of you can make a real nice combination. You've got some extra cows. Now, those heifers that you have to keep, the pregnant ones aren't going to clip a coupon for you that year. Now, in the grass-fed situation, the open ones are going to make a nice feeder for you. But the pregnant ones aren't going to clip a coupon for you that year. So you need to get a little premium for that cow, but the guy buying them can afford to pay you a premium for 2 reasons. One, every animal could have a calf. Every single one. He's not got any yearlings out there not clipping a coupon that year. So every cow could have a calf, and in addition to that, he can terminal cross. He can breed to a high growth rate, high carcass bull And if black is still beautiful, he can make them black. I wish black weren't beautiful, but it is. In the marketplace anyway. But at any rate, hopefully you understand what I mean. There's some good room for teamwork here. A guy that specializes in making a mother cow that really, really works. And a guy that would just like to simplify his operation, buy replacement cows, not heifers, and terminal across those cows. Get a lot of calf out of a moderate-sized cow and make the thing work. So this means you have minimal development of these replacement heifers. You can develop them on a lot less feed than putting them in a lot. These heifers you see on the screen develop basically on grass with a little bit of hay, increase the hay if it snowed very hard, and they got some cake. Probably 3 to 4 pounds of a 20% cake, 20% cube, every day. And they never did make 65% of their body weight developing like that, but they bred. Okay, so you have good grazing management and you get these results. Fewer herds, because when you do good grazing management, you want to make your herds as large as you possibly can. So if you have fewer, you reduce the need for total fence. You increase the herd size. Livestock are occupying a very small portion of the ranch at any given time, and that leads to less requirement for labor and higher cows per person ratio. I have people all the time tell me that they cannot advance their grazing because of the labor. Well, for a few minutes, there might be a little less labor till you get some fence and water developed. Once you get that done, the labor will diminish. Cows are all in 1 or 2 places. And you go to check them, you see them all. And if they happen to escape, and cattle usually don't like to escape from electric fence, but if they do, you know where they are. They're all right there. They all escape the same place. You put them back and fix the fence and you're good. So you can do a lot of really good things. And when you can do that, your cows per man ratio goes up. Okay, that's going to increase the size, reduce the number of herds. You eliminate the need for hay. You eliminate the need for haying equipment, labor and fuel that goes with it. By the way, even if you put up some of your own hay, once you get there, there's a high probability that you've got a neighbor that's got equipment sitting around that can come and put it up for you. Or you can buy it from somebody else. So you increase your gross margin, greatly reduce the need for people and equipment. Okay, so how do I get to efficient? You buy small replacement cows that fit your environment, or you raise them. Raise replacement heifers from bulls and cows that fit your environment. You cut inputs, and then you cull the right cow. And when you do cut inputs, you will have to cull some cows. My suggestion is you don't change to that 21-day heifer breeding season or even a 30-day breeding season all at once, unless you're willing to keep quite a few heifers. If you keep quite a few heifers, you can do that all at once. But if you start cutting down feed supplementation to the same old cow you've had, you've got to do that slowly, because you're going to cull some cows you didn't cull before. But the better cows stay and the poorer cows go. But then cull the right cow. And we had a cull cow list there a while ago you saw, and those are the ones you cull. Okay, now I got to market. Good marketing. Every animal should be sold to its best use. I won't get every one, but I like to group them into saleable groups. And I learned a long time ago that most years, a pregnant cow sells for more than an open cow. I also discovered that there's always somebody calving later than I am. We calved cows for 30 days, and at the end of 30 days, we gathered all up from each herd and put them into one herd. We were calving in April, so we bred those were May calvers. At the end of April, we just put everything else together, bred them for May, and I had a buyer that bought them for 18 straight years, the May calving cows. Paid a premium price. Now, not a big premium, but a nice price that made it very effective for us to do that. Well, by getting rid of every cow that hadn't calved in 30 days, 87%, and then breeding the heifers for a short period of time, 87% of the cows had calved at the end of 30 days. That's a nice percentage. 87% had calved at the end of 30 days. And then, okay, so we got 13% left. I don't remember, I should have kept better track of the numbers, but the percentage of those that we ended up selling open was very, very small. And I'll think about that and talk about that in just a sec. Think time, form, and place. What's the best time to sell them? What form? A weaned calf, a preconditioned calf, a yearling, a bred yearling, a cow, a bred cow. And you want to just think of all the options that you have. And don't be afraid to think of some that nobody's thought of yet. But the production and marketing have to be planned together. So I want short exposure of the heifers. Lots of heifers. The opens make good feeders, pregnant make good cows. We've talked about that. Short breeding season on heifers. I like to see you get it to 21 days. Cows, short calving season, long breeding season. And you say, how do you do that? Well, you just determine the length of your season. After that many days, you make sure all the rest of the cows are sold. You sell them as pairs, you can sell them as later bred pregnant cows. I don't think we were selling 3% of our cows as open cows. Because at break check time, we would take the bulls out. And we would tell the guys pregnant the cows, if you think the pregnancy happened after the 1st of September, call her open. So on our books, she was open. That was our pregnancy rate. However, we knew some of them were pregnant, but she never got to count for us as a pregnant cow. Some of those cows were pregnant that we couldn't palpate. Some of them they could barely palpate, but they knew she was pregnant, but they knew she was after the 1st of September. We put bulls back with them at Thanksgiving time. And then in December, we'd preg check those cows. Well, bulls put in at Thanksgiving time, you can't palpate that calf yet either. So those cows that were pregnant then, they were June and July calvers. Remember, I'd sold the May calvers, but now June and July calvers. I had a buyer that bought those. He's still buying them from that same ranch for yay many years. He does embryo transfer for seed stock breeders, and he buys those cows as recip cows. And he said, they're wonderful cows. He says, they make a good recip cow. And if they don't take the recip, I use a cleanup bull on them and they raise a good calf that way. So he's still buying those cows, paying not cull cow price, but paying a premium, a nice premium over cull cow price. Okay, in the meantime, the cows are on corn stalks in Nebraska. And at the end of the corn stalk season, say late March, when the farmers want them out of there, we preg them again. And the ones that are pregnant now, we have a sister ranch in Oklahoma that would take those cows as fall calving cows, and they've just had really, really good results doing that. So, you know, you can really tie marketing if you start thinking about what you can do to some of these other things. Okay, so here are the 5 essentials again. Approach must be both integrative and holistic. Continuous improvement of key resources, land, livestock, and people. Use of good planning and decision-making tools. War on cost, and emphasis on marketing. The 3 interrelate, the 3 charts you've seen. So how? Well, planning, and more planning. You plan formally on paper, and when you're driving around on your pickup or your four-wheeler or riding around on your saddle horse, you've got a lot of mindless time. You just as well be doing some more planning and thinking and some mental analyzing. I want alignment of people over livestock over land. I want the right people responsible for the right livestock, and I want those livestock placed on the right land, portion of the ranch that best fits them. I want large herds. Every man has his own herd. Information feedback. High cows per person ratio. Careful coordination of reproduction, genetics, grazing, marketing. They have to be tied together. They're all one. Short duration grazing with lengthy recovery. We've talked about that. Increased grazing, reduced fed feed. Take advantage of heterosis. Greatly underutilized. Greatly underutilized. Calve and sync with nature. Smaller, moderate cow size. Moderate milking ability. People first. Take care of people, yourself included. Become a lifelong learner. The people around you should become lifelong learners. You're going to get better. Put strategy before tactics. Know what you're going to do before you figure out how to do it. Prioritize for profit, not convenience, especially if you're not making money. Prioritize for profit, not convenience. Think soil before plants and animals. I got it backward for years. Animal first, plant second, soil an afterthought. Even though I kind of knew I was working at the soil, I want to now think soil first. Am I hurting it or am I helping it? Think return per acre, not per cow. Heifer breeding less than 30 days. Don't overdevelop your heifers. You want docile, fertile, productive cows. Carefully select seed stock provider. Make sure they can provide you the bull that will make a cow that fits your environment, that isn't too big, that doesn't milk too much, that is naturally healthy and fits there, can use the feedstuffs that you have available. Grazable feedstuffs I'm talking about. Select bulls whose daughters fit. Don't pamper the bulls. Don't overdevelop replacement heifers. Reduce overheads. I might say that again, reduce overheads. Reduce transportation costs. You know, it doesn't take much to get you around the ranch from one end to the other. You know, the people that I know that keep their on-ranch transportation costs the lowest are running around and use Nissan and Toyota pickups. And, you know, they have a nice F-350 or a big Dodge or whatever else with a fancy horse trailer behind it that stays parked unless they absolutely need the bigger outfit. The rest of the time they run the roustabout outfit to keep transportation costs down. You know, $50,000 rigs add quite a bit to your cost. Cow herd needs to be trouble-free, good reproduction, adapted to your location and management. Low input means they graze most of the year. Try to own things that appreciate rather than depreciate. Your people, your land, your livestock should all appreciate in value and return to you. All the things you had to purchase as inputs and as overheads, they depreciate. Okay, strategy mind, 3 very important tactical areas now. Graze right, color right cows, use low stress animal handling. And I'm done, and it's 12 o'clock.